Alright, top 10 worst movies of the year. Here you go. Starting at number 10, we have Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Now, I know the rankings have changed, but I needed to think about this before doing the video if I wanted to change any rankings or not, and I did change some of it, so you'll see that throughout the video. But anyway, at number 10, we have Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Now, I don't think this movie is bad or anything like that, but the storytelling, it's not great, but does a lot of things that does better than the Michael Bay films, especially the action, and it's much more simple to understand than the mess up stuff that's going on in the Michael Bay films, which are incredibly sloppy films. But this movie is not great like Bumblebee was, which is my favorite Transformers movie, but still it's a fun time. At number 9, we have Haunted Mansion. Now, I don't think this movie is bad or anything like that, but I mean, it's pretty generic and it has a pretty predictable plot. And while I do like how they were trying to make it more scary, more like a horror film, which I'll give it that does have some spooky elements to it. It still seems forgettable and predictable and just generic, even though it is enjoyable for what it is. At number 8, we have The Little Mermaid. Now, I know there are some people online who hate this movie for what it is, and I get why, but, while I do think this movie has some great songs and great voices in there, and stuff like that, yeah, I did think this movie was pretty slow. Like, I felt the runtime. I felt it was pretty slow for me and pretty long, and, and while you think it's and while you're thinking about that was actually pretty good for a second, for a while, I guess. That might be the case for some people, but after a while this also might be the case for some people. They go away to think about something else. And yeah, that's basically what this movie is, at least for some people like me. At number 7, we have Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, I know some of the FNAF fandom is gonna hate me um on putting this above for 2023 movies ranked, putting this below The Little Mermaid, because if you know how I mean, if you looked up stuff about that, but I think this film is still better than The Little Mermaid in terms of enjoying it for what it is. But this is a sloppily made film. Like the decisions the characters make in this movie, some of them you think like, oh, where did that come from, or something like that if you've seen the movie. But um, and also I think this movie relies too much on the fans rather than in, rather than satisfying the people who haven't played Five Nights at Freddy's, I guess. And and yeah, I think this movie relied too much on the fans. Like, it kind of feels like a film made for kids, if you know how I mean, if you've seen the movie. But yeah, there's Five Nights at Freddy's. Now at number 6, we have The Slumber Party. Now, this movie wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be, but I mean, it's a pretty cheesy film, and yeah, I guess that's because it's made on the low budget. But I mean, I think it still deserves to be on this list, because most of this list, most of the movies I enjoyed, but still aren't that great, and that includes this film as well. Now, coming in at number 5, now we're getting into the ones that I just truly did not like. And coming in at number 5, we have Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. Now, this movie wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, because maybe I was just being dumb, because it just felt like the trailers were created by AI, because it gave away the whole movie, and none of the jokes made any sense. And that's why it just looked awful to me. And it also looked very generic, and like it was The Little Mermaid flipped around. That this movie does feel like it was written by a young kid or something. But I thought this movie had the potential to be the worst movie of this year, but it's not. and I think this movie's just incredibly rushed. It's like if you took Luca and Turning Red and combined them both and made them less interesting. Yeah, that's basically what this movie is, and it's incredibly rushed, and I think the build-up, is just not enough time to build up until you find out who the villain is, which is spoiled in the trailer. And if you haven't seen the trailers yet, please don't make the mistake of watching any trailers for this movie. Just walk into this movie blind. So, yeah, that's number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and probably the biggest disappointment of the year for me, because, yeah, this film just wasn't it, for having an Indiana Jones finale. I think the story, I mean, it's just a story, but, I thought it had forgettable characters, and, some of it was boring at times, and while you may feel satisfied but also not at the same time by the end of it because it's a little anticlimactic, I think the biggest problem I had with this movie, the problem that bothered me the most with this film, was the length. Like, it didn't rely on scenes where, like, there were scenes that were added on that were unnecessary to be added on. It relied in the way that there were so many scenes that went on for way too long. Like, it was too freaking long. But yeah, that's number 4 for you. Coming in at number 3, we have Wish. Now, I had to think about it for a while on which animated film is worse, in my opinion, between Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, and this. But now that I've had some time to think about it, this movie is worse. So, I think, this film just wasn't it to celebrate Disney's 100th anniversary. Like, this wasn't the film I was expecting. Like, I mean, this movie was slow, some of it was boring, the characters were generic, and this movie's generic itself. And I think my biggest problem with the movie was the humor that bothered me the most, because, I mean, I think I only laughed one time and that was it, but the quirky humor in this movie just didn't work for me, because, I mean, it didn't work at all, because I was thinking to myself, what human could have wrote this, could have been so lazy and unimagined? Like, this movie feels like it was written by AI, but wasn't. It was written by a team of animators, a pretty big team, but, that's what I heard, but I'm looking forward to hearing someone's explanation on why this film feels like it's written by AI, but isn't. Now, coming in at number 2, we have Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Now, this film was just, it just wasn't a good sequel, in my opinion. I thought the first one had heart, but this was just more relying on telling a generic superhero story. And yeah, there's a lot of cringy moments in this movie, which just really bothered me the most out of this film. And yeah, it's just not a good movie. And finally, coming in at number 1 is my pick for the worst movie of the year, and if you guessed that movie correctly, that's of course Peter Pan and Wendy. And this movie is just hot garbage. I thought this movie was okay the first time I watched it, but now I've had some time to think about it, this movie is a complete piece of crap. Like, I mean, this movie, this is probably one of the worst Disney remakes made to date. I think the top 2 worst remakes, not to order them or anything, are this and the Disney's Pinocchio live-action remake. Yeah, the Pinocchio live-action remake with Tom Hanks. And I'm like, where's the magic in this movie? And it was so unimagined and stuff like that. And if you want to make the Lost Boys gender fluid and have one of them say this line, which is when Wendy says, you're girls, and then one of the girls says, so, that's a horrible way of making a movie if that was the point. because our characters were lifeless, and the movie's not well casted either. Especially the role of Peter Pan is just a little kid, which is just extremely weird to me. And if you have kids, please don't watch this movie. Watch something else.